everybody, and welcome to the Qatar race review for the Winging It F1 podcast. I'm Freddie Coates, I'm with Adam Dickinson and Nigel Chu, and we're going to talk about the first ever F1 Grand Prix in Qatar. So, Adam, you doing good? You happy? Enjoy Qatar?
Yes, all three. I mean, I wasn't there, which, unfortunately, it would be nice to be there.
That's a shame.
Enjoyed watching it from the television, or from my laptop, actually, because, don't have televisions here. But it was very good.
No.
Not very good, actually, but I'm good. How are you?
Nigel, were you in Qatar?
No, I wasn't.
That's a shame. It would be a good segue.
Yeah, well, I wasn't there, unfortunately.
No, I wasn't either. Did you enjoy it? Did you have a good time? You doing well?
That's a lot of questions. No, yes, no.
Did you enjoy it? I can't remember the order of the questions.
No, I can't remember the third one anyway, but that's...
Yeah. Yeah, there we go.
Either way, personally, I thought it went by really quickly, to be honest. It was one of those races where it was just kind of like, oh, we're at the end of the race now. And I quite enjoyed it. I thought I had good storylines, definitely had good storylines. I mean, goodness me, the amount of news that's been happening in the past few weeks. It's one of those things that if we were to try to just distill it down into a podcast, we'd be here for hours. So,
good job we're not trying to do that.
We'll start with the headline, which is obviously Lewis Hamilton has won the first ever Qatar Grand Prix for Formula One. There was a lights to flag victory. He never lost the lead and he won it by 28 seconds. So that's, not bad. Obviously, Verstappen pitted for a fastest lap at the end, but he would have won it by 8 seconds, 7 seconds or so anyway. He was cruising to the finish. It was a brilliant performance and just what he needed in this time in the championship. Nigel, what did you think of Lewis this weekend? I thought his quali lap was stunning.
Well, you know what? It wasn't that good compared to Brazil, but it was still very, very good. Don't get me wrong. His qualifying lap, been underrated, I'd say. I think probably one of his best laps in the turbo hybrid era, actually. He's qualified more than half a second ahead with an older engine as well. That was pretty something else. That was something else. And then in the race, pretty something. I'm muddled up. And then in the race, he got the start, and then the win never looked under threat at all. He was just cruising out there. I think he had lots of pace to spare as well. So he did exactly what he had to do. It was a bit like the Verstappen's wins in Austria early this year. I thought he clearly had the best car, and he made the most of it. So pretty classy performance.
Would you say, Adam, that's what Lewis has been missing from his repertoire this year? Just like a lights to flag victory?
Yeah, it was his most comfortable victory of the season, really. And the fact that it's come, it's in the third race before the end, where Verstappen was doing this in Monaco and the two Austria races, is kind of not the best look, I think, for Mercedes. But on, purely from this weekend, he looked dominant, really. And that's one of the few times we've been able to kind of apply that to his race this season. Yeah, he looks, he just looked in control the whole way through. Obviously, Verstappen not being next to him on the front row had a part to play in that, but he was able to just take advantage of that and cruise to the finish. And I think the one thing missing is the fastest lap, which has kind of decently big championship implications. It means that if they finish first and second next race, if Hamilton wins and Verstappen finishes second, Verstappen will be leading going into the final race. But it's beyond the fastest lap, it was a pretty complete performance from him.
Yes. Talking of the championship, it's now 8 points between him and his rival Max Verstappen, and Max Verstappen obviously finished in second, started in seventh after a fairly irritating moment with yellow flags. I'll say irritating that Max didn't just have a bit of common sense. I thought then he was so far around the lap, not that far around the lap when Gasly pulled to a halt anyway. Presumably he could have been told to abort it, I think, on top of my mind. Nigel,
I blame his engineer. I don't blame because his steering wheel wasn't flashing, was it? It was just those flags. Yeah. Yes, he should have seen the flags. But unlike, say, I think it was Mexico a couple of years ago when the steering wheel was flashing and stuff, and that was more silly, I guess. But for this, I'd say more of the blame was on his engineer for not saying, because he didn't even have to improve as well, because Bottas didn't go faster. So
I agree.
I'd put more of the blame on his engineer, but the grid penalty was absolutely right, and Bottas's grid penalty was right. I've not seen the footage of Sainz, so I'll have to go with whatever the stewards said. But I was a bit surprised Sainz to get a penalty, but he must have slowed down enough. But yeah, I thought the grid penalties were absolutely spot on.
Yeah, it's not a marginal decision. It's not anything really where a decision has to be made as such. You just look at the data, and clearly it showed that they didn't slow down enough, and that's where the grid penalties came from. It's fairly open and shut.
Yeah, Verstappen's lap time improved, which was the main thing that said to me as well, come on, Red Bull, you're better than this. When I say irritating, I just mean Red Bull. Yeah, I agree. The team should have done better with that. They should have probably called them into the pits and not bothered, I think. But there's so much precedent this year for yellow flags and double waved yellows, meaning that you probably will get a penalty. It was also irritating because it robbed us from Verstappen on the front row. And even if we're going on about the dirty side of the track and so on, which was a big talking point for the start of this race, it didn't look like to me that it caused too much of an issue for the most part. And yeah, we missed out on a Lewis Max heading down to a very fast turn one, but he made a good quick return to his arguably rightful position. Adam, what did you think of Max's start?
It was absolutely fantastic. He was just on it. He got a fantastic launch, and then he just picked the right line basically through the whole of the first lap, bar kind of a hairy moment with Alonso, or a tetchy moment with Alonso, where he was coming off into the left-hander, then Alonso was coming out to the right, and Verstappen had to take to the grass or the AstroTurf to avoid that. But no, beyond that, it was exactly what he needed, really, and contrasted with Bottas's start, then it's kind of night and day between those two. And yeah, it was everything kind of Verstappen really needed, and he got back up to second very quickly, and that was all she wrote really for the front two. So yeah, it was expert damage limitation really, and as I mentioned before, he got the fastest lap, which is kind of another, probably the icing on the cake for his race.
All calm and collected, I think, because it would have been so easy to overdrive at the launch and into turn one, into turn two, but he got everything spot on. He also saw Alonso coming, like Adam said. So I think it was a key moment, because it would have been so easy to get involved in a tangle or to choose the wrong line in the first few corners, but I think Verstappen got it pretty much perfect. And then he knew he didn't have the car to challenge Hamilton, so he made sure he stayed within the pit windows, so that he could pit for the fastest lap, even though he had it anyway, I think, on the mediums. So yeah, apart from a little blip in qualifying, it was another pretty good weekend.
Yeah, his launch was mega. Starting on medium tyres and getting arguably a better launch than lots of soft runners around him. I was very impressed by that. And I think, the whole mindset from Red Bull this weekend really seemed to be damage limitation. I didn't really think they were going into the race expecting to even challenge for the win before Max had a 5-place grid penalty, when he was provisionally second. So I think really with this whole weekend, definitely Max's mindset has been, we're going to take this to the end, but we're not going to, we're going to do it properly. And I think his radio across the race was so relaxed and calm that he still doesn't, there's no stress in this championship fight, which I'm very impressed by.
It was like a 2020 race, I thought, with Hamilton romping away, then Verstappen in second and trying to kind of make his own fun, and then everyone else so far behind. So yeah, it's kind of a race like last year.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was quite after Brazil and all of that craziness. In some ways, it was quite nice to just have a bit of a more relaxing race. But yeah, I think that's a very good analogy or similarity, and I think it sets the championship fight up quite nicely going into the last two rounds. And I think both drivers really did the best that they could this weekend. I don't really see a scenario where Verstappen wins and the scenario would be Mercedes or Hamilton screwing up, and they didn't do that either. So I think both drivers kind of nailed it this weekend.
Yeah, it was the race was nice and relaxing comparatively to the off-track attacks and onslaughts that seem to be going all over the place. But we'll put a pin in those. We'll probably come to those a bit later on, because third place was arguably one of the more unexpected podiums of the season, because it was Fernando Alonso returning to the Formula One rostrum for the first time since 2014. Pretty decent. I think he's been getting better and better and better all year, and this was by far one of his best weekends. His pace has been excellent and a well-deserved podium.
He deserves it. He deserves it. He's been fantastic all year, and he was exemplary, I think, over the weekend. He was on it straight away, found the groove, and that enabled him to try and find those precious hundredths in each sector or each corner. And then, to qualify fifth in the Alpine, qualifying isn't his best strength, he says. Ocon can often be a match for him. Not sure what the head-to-head is, but I think it's quite close this year. And then in the race, it looked like third place was going away from him, but then Perez decided to go on the two-stopper. And I think the way Alonso managed his tyres and stayed off the curbs before the virtual safety car at the end, those 10 laps or so, he managed it really, really well. Used all of his experience, used his knowledge as well. So a fantastic weekend for Alonso. I think right up there with Hamilton as drivers of the weekend for me.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that. And in general, Alpine really kind of nailed their weekend. Both cars made it to Q3, and Ocon ended up finishing fifth and kind of behind Perez, kind of leading the pack of midfielders after that. So yeah, just it was a kind of great weekend all round for them, but particularly Alonso. Like you say, he's been fantastic this season, and he really helped Ocon out with his win in Hungary, with his incredible defense of Hamilton. So yeah, it's kind of what it was quite just a happy moment for it and for the sport as well, because it's what Alonso deserves after this season. And I think you could see how much it meant to him. Obviously, he's won titles, won races, had some incredible race victories, and it's you could see, I think, in his mind that seemed to be on a par with some of those moments, in that it was just such a kind of major thing for him, and he looked so happy at the end of the race, which was really nice to see happy Alonso. And he has in good ways and bad ways kind of lit up the grid this season, so it's kind of nice to have a crowning off moment for that.
I know what you mean about happy Alonso, because I think everyone was so happy to see the back of him in 2018, because he just spent so long just complaining about things and doing the best lap he'd ever done, and it's just like, oh, all right, Fernando, all right. And that bored me.
He was right.
Yeah, he definitely always did the best lap he ever did. I don't know, it was just the way he was going about it back in the day was just kind of crap, I thought. But he's come back and been humble, Alonso, and he's been great. He's been good fun, and he's been a laugh, and he's enjoying Formula One again. And it's great to see, because it makes us enjoy Formula One. So I'm very happy you got the podium. Yeah, Nigel, you're right. It was due to a bit of arrogance from Red Bull, thinking Perez would be able to clear him. Do you think it was they took their eye off the ball and just forgot about the midfield? Or
I was surprised. I thought he was gonna go to the end. I was surprised he pitted. I kind of had to look down and look up again to it. But why have they done that? But then with what happened afterwards, they probably did the right thing to pit him, because he might have had puncture and it would have been tight. So,
they pit him in response to Bottas's puncture, didn't they? So
yeah, it seemed that way, didn't it?
Yeah.
But I think coming out in traffic, losing time against Stroll, losing a little bit of time against Ocon, that's where it hurt him. And I think Red Bull have played it conservative. I think the Constructors' Championship must have been on their mind with that pit stop after Bottas had his puncture. So I don't blame them. And I think I understand the decision, and probably given with all the punches that happened afterwards, it was the right choice to make for Red Bull, and Alpine made the right choice for Alonso, because they can afford to take that risk.
Yeah, I think if you look at the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull have closed it to 5 points now. They, the dropping from third to fourth lost them 3 points, rather than the risk of losing 15 or 12 if he'd retired. So, and ultimately, he probably still would have caught him, or it would have been very close. I think it would have been extremely close if it weren't for the VSC. So, I think if all things being equal, it, could have been the right decision anyway. And it was just the VSE, I do think, saved Alonso's bacon a little bit, which, isn't to take anything away from him because he had to be in that position in the first place. But at the same time, it played into their hands and played out of Red Bull's. But I think it was, the right decision for Red Bull to take.
One last thing on Alonso, his move on Gasly that turned to around the outside. Absolutely outstanding. I mean, it didn't look like that. He just found a clean air. Yeah, because Gasly was behind Hamilton, wasn't he, in the dirtiest. Then just placed his car like that and then just roll the car around the outside. It was absolutely incredible move.
One of the moves of the season, that in my mind, which is just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And it's like we all say, great to see Fernando back on the podium. 3 great drivers on the podium. Honestly, one of the most
3 best drivers in F1 in the last 10 years on the podium, I think.
I mean, it's quite there's quite a nice symmetry of kind of the driver that ended Schumacher's dominance, and then the driver who built the next dynasty, and then the driver who we all think is going to kind of be the next big thing after that. So there's quite a nice, link there, I think, between the Schumacher era to the next 10 years or however long that will be. So
maybe in 16 years time we'll be reminiscing when Max Verstappen has come back for his comeback and gets a podium for the first time in 10 years or something.
Mercedes.
Who knows? Very good. Top 3. I think everyone was very happy with it, and like we say, keeps the championship open. We've got 8 points in it, and I just find that amazing. 2 races to go, 8 points in it, not 8 races to go. I don't think there's 8 races to go. Imagine if there was. Oh my goodness. Honestly, this championship is already 20 races done. I just kind of think, mad, if this is 2015, we would have finished in Brazil and it would have been easy.
Verstappen would have won.
Verstappen champion. Exactly.
I want to ask, who's in the better position? Who would you rather be? Would you rather be Verstappen with a lead or Hamilton with arguably the better car?
Verstappen. Not even a hesitation on that, because Hamilton has to be perfect from now until the end of the season, and Verstappen.
Well, doesn't Verstappen as well?
No, he just has to stop Hamilton being perfect once.
I don't know.
See, I think for me, because Verstappen got the fastest lap, I'd rather be in Verstappen. But if it was 7 points equally, I'd feel so if Lewis had the fastest lap, or if Max didn't have the fastest lap, and that kind of thing, then it would be, I think, very interesting. I wouldn't be able to call it then, but I think this fastest lap point swings it in Verstappen's favour, because with an ordinary second place, he can be a point ahead.
Even if they're a level, Verstappen will be ahead 1-2 because of wins.
Yeah.
Hamilton would have had to have had the fastest lap, but.
Exactly.
No, I think it's a tricky one, because Mercedes look like they've got a pretty big margin, and Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, I fully expect them to go well at. So, I'm not sure which one I'd rather be in, actually.
We have no idea what's going to happen. We could have chaos in Saudi Arabia, because there's no way you can ever clear a car from there and without having a red flag, surely. Or a very slow safety car.
Just one final point on. Oh no.
Okay, I was going to say, and then Abu Dhabi was a Red Bull lights to flag victory last year, but who knows?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's. I think difficult. I don't know. I just think there's too many variables still, and that's kind of why I think I'd, rather be in Verstappen. I think you bet on something going wrong more than everything going right. And kind of that's, I don't know, especially from what we've seen this season, that's kind of where I stand. But just one more thing on Alonso is that now that's a 25-point jump for Alpine in the Constructors' Championship, and they've gone well clear of AlphaTauri. So they have probably sown that fifth position up unless something crazy happens in the next two
Yeah.
races. But
All eyes on the
that's
front.
what's
All eyes on the front.
because Alpine, in my opinion, have not had a car that's better. That's been better than AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri have had a better car. So for Alpine to be ahead, it's huge. Mainly thanks to this result in the Hungary weekend. So it's a huge moment for them, and I think it is game over. For third and fifth now in the Constructors' Championship.
Probably game on now for the championship right at the top. But one thing that was kind of tetchy this weekend, which could have thrown everything off kilter and definitely was what put Red Bull on the mindset of the Constructors' Championship, was the tyres. Valtteri Bottas went long for 30, 33 and 34 laps, and then he got a puncture. And then everyone was terrified that tyres would get punctures, and three other drivers got punctures: Lando Norris, Nicholas Latifi, and George Russell, with Bottas and Latifi both eventually retiring from the race, and Norris still finishing the points and Russell eventually finishing the race, but way back. It's caused a bit of a debate. Pirelli were very, very adamant that it was a two-stop prior to the race. So when lots of drivers were trying to do a two-stop and then got punctures and then said it was Pirelli's fault, some people, I don't know, do we take that with a pinch of salt and think a bit like, hang on a second, guys? Or is there more to it? Nigel, you seem like a very tyre guru kind of guy.
Oh, you know me well. I love tyre.
sniffer.
I love strategy. I love F1. I love you guys.
That's nice.
I think the problem I have with these Pirelli tyres and the rubber is the same as Silverstone last year as well, whatever else has been punched recently, is that there's no drop-off in pace at all. You can do your fastest lap or set a personal best, and then suddenly you'll have a puncture just after 30 laps or whatever. And I don't think that's right. There should be some kind of indication, whether it is the lap time slowing down significantly or the rubber, you can see chunks of it flying off. But instead, it cuts and delaminates suddenly. And I don't like that. I think there should be some kind of clue, because teams should be able to react to, we used to call it the cliff, didn't we? But that doesn't seem to exist anymore. It's just a sudden tyre failure. So I think that's the problem. Arguably, the teams should roughly know when the tyres is going to puncture, but I think there's got to be some kind of clue, because otherwise it's just a lottery, quite frankly. And I don't think it should be like that, personally.
Yeah,
I agree. It's quite scary.
I think, it's a lottery, and Norris was able to get away relatively scot-free. I mean, he had to take a pit stop, but his happened just before the pit entrance. Latifi's happened just after the pit entrance, and he kind of tried to do half a lap with it and then just kind of gave up and parked up, and that was what put the VSE out for the end of the race. So it's it's such a kind of sledgehammer-y race as well. It goes without saying that you lose so much time, and like you say, kind of having that indication that it's going to go would help the teams out a lot, and that's kind of what we want to see. That I guess not. We like unpredictability, but not to that extent. We want it to be kind of in positive ways and whatever. So I think having said all of that, at the same time, it was, like you said, Freddie, a race where Pirelli was saying it was a two-stop, and where they're running on the curbs and the kind of white sub-curves outside of the curves all weekend long. So from that angle, it's maybe not too much of a surprise that there were tyre problems, but like you said, it might be better to not have it as a complete surprise as it bursts. So I think to me it's kind of 50-50. There are Karen.
Yeah, that's what
I think though, with that, if you're doing personal best lap times, there's no reason for you to pit. And I think that's why the teams did it, because you look at the lap times you're doing, you look whether there is any drop off, and if there isn't, and you are doing green sectors, why pit? So
just one thing to that, just devil's advocating a bit, because I agree with you, but isn't that what the drivers were asking for a few years ago? We had all this stuff with thermal degradation a couple of years ago with tyres, and this is when everyone was dunking on Pirelli so much, because there's the whole bad product era of the Pirelli tyres. And they said, we want tyres we can push on and be fast with at the beginning and end of stints and so on. Is this not now a tyre that the drivers have asked for?
That's a very good point. That is an excellent point. And I can't argue against that because you're right. You can push on it and then you still have to make the pit stop in case you get a puncture. So that's a very good point.
Because there still is a drop off in pace, and there still is an undercut, and there still are more powerful, new, fresher tyres. But they ask for tyres that wear, but also that keep the pace. So a tyre that wears but keeps the pace is a tyre that's going to puncture without you expecting it, isn't it? And I feel like that's what we've got this weekend. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's an awful thing to ask for in a tyre, but it all feels a bit kind of he said, she said, pointing at each other about it. And it's like, oh, it's not our fault the tyres punctured. That's obviously Pirelli's fault and so on. And yes, it's a Pirelli tyre, but yes, when it's a 57 lap race and Pirelli say no one's going to make it on a one stop beforehand. Normally they say maybe some teams will try a one stop, even if they say we think it's a two stop. This time, I was the first time I kind of really remember them being quite adamant on a two stop. Do you think maybe Pirelli needs to be a bit more kind of do this or you're an idiot in their press releases?
Yes. No, nah, not realistically. You can't. I think what they said was probably right. They give the recommendations as about the teams whether they listen or not. But I think every car's so different. The setup, the aero, every little thing. The only thing that's the same is the tyres. So the tyres will react differently depending on the car, the camera, the pressures, every little thing. So whilst one team might only be able to do 28 laps, another team might be able to do 35 laps, save you pushing at the same rate, go over the curbs at the same amount. So it's a tricky one. But I think overall I still stand by what I said before, and that there should be some kind of indication, I think. But you did
I
make
agree
a very
with
good
that.
F1 drivers are never going to say, "Oh yeah, we asked for this for 3 years ago. We had it coming."
No.
Like, it's not in drivers' vocabulary. So, it's, I guess, unsurprising that it comes to this, and everyone bashes Pirelli anyway. But yeah, I think, I don't know. If the people who would say if you're taking that risk for the one stop, that's fine. But I think you've got to do it knowing the risks and kind of with the driver knowing the risks as well, so that they don't come out afterwards and say, "Oh, it's rubbish." We were told it was absolutely fine. I think that's the key thing. And Nigel, Freddie, do you disagree or?
No, I'll just wait. Freddie's back now.
I'm back. I'm gone again.
"25 seconds.
It's bad audio. Bad audio content. Really.
Freddie's definitely back now. He paused again, but he is back now. Take it away, Freddie.
I can't hear a thing. I'm just going to wait a
Is
second.
he not messing around?
Oh well.
There we go.
Okay, are you good?
Yes.
Cool. I've had to switch to hotspot again. Sorry, Adam. I haven't heard a thing in the past minute and a half.
It's all right. It was just wrapping up this discussion, really, so we can move on.
Okay. Right. Cool. Well, there we go. That's the tyre chat done. Hopefully we don't have any more issues with that this season, because I'm dreading a high-speed tyre failure around that Jeddah track. That does not look like something that would be very fun at all. We've already seen Lance Stroll have one at Baku.
I guess the only thing is whether this kind of serves a bit of a shot across the bows. Maybe teams won't be so thinking about pushing it at Jeddah, especially Red Bull and Mercedes, who are pushing for it. I know in Baku it was a different thing, but I think
just really because you look at Alonso anyway. I mean, they still pushed the one stop, and 3 or 4 cars across the midfield still went for it and things like that. Even with the punctures happening everywhere around them, from with the Williams cars and Norris around really similar times. and similar stint lengths approaching for these guys, and they still were like, well, oh well. But who knows?
Because they see it as an opportunity, don't they? They say, oh, everyone else is having a butcher. If it doesn't happen to us, we're going to gain 20 seconds by not pitting. So that's the scenario.
But and obviously the driver will be on board with that. So it's that kind of thing. But who knows? Who knows? Who knows?
The teams, the strategists, the drivers, like we've already
God
said.
knows.
Yes.
But yeah, to really kind of wrap up Qatar, because there's so much going on. Do we just have any sort of general thoughts on it? Do we? I mean, obviously, there's a whole other debate about Formula One going to Qatar, but what did we think of Losail? Good, bad, interesting?
I was pleasantly surprised by it. I think, like you say, there's the debate about F1 racing, which we've covered many times on this podcast and for Saudi Arabia and for other countries. But leaving all that aside, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought the lap actually looked really good. If you just watch a full onboard, it's like, it's really, really full on and really, kind of pushing the cars to the limits. The kind of long right hands curves at the top of the track were nice, and I really liked it. I thought the racing, obviously the majority of overtakes took place on the big long straight, but the first kind of sector, or the first three corners, did kind of leave a bit of room for someone to come back, and we saw a couple of good battles through there. So I think it was Ocon on Perez.
I
I didn't expect much before the race, but actually, I think it was, not as bad as a lot of people, including myself, were making it out. So, a good mark for Losail.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good track as well. It surprised me. I still think it needs another overtaking spot, like good overtaking spot other than turn one. And I think the runoff area, I know there's gravel, but the gravel's nowhere near where the drivers are on the exit, because the track limits was changing after every single session. At one point, they said, right, forget about the rules we've just said. It's going to be all the corners. And then for qualifying, they went back and said it's going to be X, Y, and Z corners. So track limits is a massive mess. Luckily, it didn't really have much effect in qualifying or the race. We didn't see that many laps deleted, actually. But yeah, it's a different challenge, high speed. The drivers enjoyed it as well, because you could push, and drivers love those high speed corners. It just makes them feel good, doesn't it? And I think there was probably more overtaking than I thought as well, because that last corner you could make a slightly different line, which set you up for the main straight. So pleasantly surprised, just like Adam.
Yeah, I can only echo that. I think you're right. Maybe it could do with another overtaking spot. I think there's some talk about maybe for a 2024 return, if they go to the circuit rather than to a downtown lower street track, whether they would extend the straight for turn 6 and just make that longer and then have a sharp turn and back up, because that was the only other really possible place for kind of an interesting, simple kind of move. But I think really it looks like a track that could be wonderful with the 2022 cars. Who knows? Because if the cars can follow nicely through the middle sector, then you could get some lovely little switches in a way that Portimao was able to do as well, which was a track that isn't really here anymore. Adam obviously has a vendetta against Portimao because he always knows the racing is actually okay when the cars race.
Because it's a bad circuit. It's had bad races and I don't like it.
Anyway, it's a fantastic circuit.
It's a fantastic track. Definitely fourth. But anyway, that's not a debate we're going to have again. We had it way too much twice.
That's because there's 2 more races and there should have been. Sorry, carry on.
But anyway, that maybe wraps up our general thoughts in Qatar section. No, just going to say, I think this is going to be an interesting thing. But what's your favourite ridiculous news story of the weekend? Adam, you can go first because I've thrown this on you.
I don't know.
All right. Nigel, do you have one?
Favourite ridiculous news story?
Yeah, because there's been so much.
Horn getting summoned to the stewards has to be.
I mean, you were going to say that.
Just tops it all off, doesn't it? I mean, even though my opinion is that Wolf has been just as vocal over the last 2 weeks or so, but yeah, I think, because I don't remember a team principal getting someone to the studio is definitely not since I've been watching F1. So yeah, it has to be that for me.
Yeah, naughty boy Horner. Of course, he said that was in response to him criticising a marshal, just describing the yellow flags in qualifying as being put out by a rogue marshal, which is definitely not the case at all. That is not how motorsport fans or motorsport figures
He apologised
talk about
away.
marshals. He did apologise straight away, but it was one of those sort of half-ass apologies where it's kind of like, well, if anyone was offended, oh, I'm sorry, but it's not him acknowledging what he did wrong. I thought when I watched it, it was a great bit of TV though. He came out of the steward's office and went straight on TV. But yeah, obviously, I think we should just say hats off to marshals, basically, because they're all volunteers and they're all excellent. And these are the people running at the cars when they're on fire. So
yeah, without marshals, there will be no racing at all, or not even testing. So there'll be no motorsport. So they are the unsung heroes.
It'd just be underground street racing, not as in underground, but off the books
street
racing.
F1.
Yeah, that'd be. Imagine that.
Just like old F1 cars being driven by criminals. After about 10 years, they'll have the 5th movie and it'll be a bank heist with Dwayne The Rock
floor
Johnson.
lights on and stuff. That'd be fun.
Well, I mean, that's maybe the future of the Doha Grand Prix. So yeah, we've discussed it a bit on where the championship is now, but obviously we're going to Saudi in 2 weeks. The track is looking complete. How that happened is going to be probably brushed onto the carpet, but we can have our suspicions about Saudi Arabia. What do we think? A quick jab
Being
on Saudi
on the
Arabia.
clean side of the grid is going to be so important. I really think the dirty side of the grid is going to be so dirty. So I think pole position is going to be crucial because then that fail take is going to be quite difficult as well. And I think if Red Bull are gonna beat Mercedes, it'll be at Saudi, not Abu Dhabi. I think they've got a better chance in Saudi Arabia than Abu Dhabi.
That's an interesting opinion. That's gone against most people.
Pretty normal for me then.
I think
the stars will be all right. They've got F2 there. So they've got 3 F2 races. So that's going to give a bit of grip to the other side of the grid and give us a few ideas of what's going to happen. I think it could well be one of those races where it's a new track, so everyone's a little bit kind of tentative and not going to risk things in a way like we had with Baku in 2016, where we're going to be like going into a race going, oh, it's going to be mad. It's such a high-speed street track. Look how close the walls are, and they're in 6th gear. And then nothing is going to happen, and it's going to just be the same as everything.
I don't know. It looks very fast. It looks like the fast bits of Baku, but extended and kind of just less of the 90-degree stuff in the first couple of sectors. So, yeah, I think there's, in terms of the championship fight, there's more to go wrong for any of the cars here. There's more kind of variables like that, which is why I'd probably agree with your point, Nigel. I think there's more chance of Mercedes and Hamilton not winning here than in Abu Dhabi, but yeah, it'll be. I don't know. I am looking forward to it. I think we won't know how it'll be until they get racing on there, but I think there's the potential for fireworks, and even if there isn't, there's so many narratives going into this last couple of races of the season that even a race like Qatar, which wasn't like you alluded to, it was like a lot of the races last year, but because it's in this championship fight with this margin between these two drivers, then it's all something that we can talk about it a lot more. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah. I was going to say, if Hamilton doesn't finish the race for whatever reason, Verstappen only needs top 2 and he is champion. I hope that doesn't happen. We all want it to go down to the final race, but just that unpredictability of a new track, street track, and badly timed safety car or getting caught up in an incident in qualifying or the race, something like that. I think that's what Red Bull and Mercedes have to be aware of, and I think it's going to be about risk versus reward more than ever. And I feel that's where Verstappen will be slightly more aggressive, perhaps. And that might help him get up to speed quicker, maybe. Just these things. But, looking at Hamilton's engine, Mercedes' engine, that is going to be a big factor again. So I still think Hamilton and Mercedes are favourites, but there's something in me which says it won't be a smooth weekend for them.
I think Bottas will have a big weekend. That's my call.
Oh, we're just doing generic random things. I don't know. McLaren on the podium. I don't know why I've said that. That's not going to happen.
It's going to be so tense. I mean, this is the greatest championship fight we might ever see. You were one of, and there's 2 races to go. 8 points in it, 5 points in the constructors. The tension, it will not get any higher. It is absolutely fantastic.
The important thing to remember: Max can win the title at Saudi if he wins with fastest lap and Lewis is 6th, if he wins and Lewis is 7th, if he is 2nd with fastest lap and Lewis is 10th, and as Nigel said, if he is 2nd and Lewis fails to score. That will put him that will make him unreachable when they go to Abu Dhabi. Whether that happens, we don't know. I think you've basically...
if they go to Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, we don't know. They're going to go to... Whether the title goes to Abu Dhabi, we don't know. I think we're relatively confident it will, but you can't ever say things like this because this is Formula One in 2021, and it is a feast for all of us as Hungary fans, and we can't wait for the denouement because who knows what's going to happen? Who knows?
I think it would just... I hope it does go to Abu Dhabi. I think it'd feel like an anti-climax if, Hamilton crashes or whatever, and that's kind of the championship over. After there's been this massive build-up, it just feels right that it goes to Abu Dhabi. But, if anyone does screw it badly, then it's on them for losing the championship. So, yeah, it's all roads lead to Saudi Arabia and then maybe Abu Dhabi. Maybe not.
Roads lead to places. And on that note, a lovely classic.
Yeah, the road for us for this episode.
Oh, it's the end of the road for this episode. That's really nice. I like that. So yeah, thanks very much for this episode, guys. Thank you guys for joining me to discuss the Qatar Grand Prix. We might be back in 2 years to talk about another Qatar Grand Prix, or maybe we'll do a podcast on the World Cup. Who knows?
Are we good? It's coming home. It's coming home.
It is coming home, to be fair. Legitimately.
It probably will, actually.
Let's go.
But will the F1 Championship come home for Lewis or Max? Stay tuned to F1 to find out, and then come here to us to watch us talk about something you already know. That's how F1 podcasts work. Thank you, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.